And so the title of this talk is Global Competency, Empathy, and COIL, Takeaways from the Annual Conference on Global Higher Education at Lakeland University of Japan. And so first of all, I just want to say that the reason why I asked to participate, I wanted to participate, is that I saw relevance with what I do, with what we do here at Todai, and the theme was global education. This is an annual conference. It's a small one-day conference, but it's one that I know for sure I'll be going to again because I learned a lot, even just for one day. And I'm really hoping to also encourage some of my colleagues in the Global Center for Global Education to participate, maybe organize a panel for next year. Because of our affiliation with the Center for Global Education, but also to my teaching pedagogy related to my courses in general. As part of my appointment, I teach junior classes in Alessa and Flow, which have to do with speaking, fluency in academic speaking and writing. And some of the key concepts I work with are global competency, cultural empathy, and also diversity and inclusion. And so the conference was very useful in that sense. Another thing that I found useful about the conference was the fact that they had a special panel on teaching SDGs in the Japan's college classroom. I won't be talking about this specifically, but this is something that I know, at least for faculty in the Global Center for Global Education, can be very useful, and so it's relevant to those courses, but it's also relevant to UTokyo courses more generally. And then finally, the conference gave me a chance to share for the first time in Japan my experience with COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning. No panels were devoted to COIL at the conference. However, just by talking to people, several people told me, oh, I do COIL. Oh, yeah, I do COIL. There seemed to be a lot of excitement and interest, which, was really good to hear. And so I was able to make contacts, for the future with possible partners or possible people to exchange ideas with from other universities. I was the only person presenting from Todai, by the way, which is also something maybe to consider for us, for all of us, for the future, right? And so these are some of my main observations. I wonder if I should do slideshow, maybe it's better. Okay. Can you still see well? Yeah. Okay, so just a couple notes, main key points from things I learned from the conference. The keynote speaker was Sato Kuniaki. He's director of, I can't see, director. Sorry, I have to remove this because I can't see actually. Yeah, sorry. I don't know what's happening. Okay, Director of International Affairs Division in the Higher Education Bureau of Ministry of Education. And he just talked in general about Japan's internationalization trends. I'm sure a lot of this data is not new to many of us at UTokyo. It was not too surprising to me either, but nevertheless, I think it was good to reflect on that data together. So some of the data, of course, this is post COVID-19 pandemic. We saw a general decrease in number of Japanese university students traveling abroad, as well as decrease in the number of international students at Japanese universities. And Kuniaki also talked about, current actions that the government is putting together to deal with the situation. I'll talk about that in a second. But to me, those numbers kind of immediately triggered my, questions about Todai. So I went back to the, if you even just go to the main page for Todai website, as of May 2023, the student total is 28,919. International students amounts up to 16%. It's actually not a bad low number at all. Right. So, and I was like, okay, this is really nice. However, whenever I talk to my students, especially the flow students, the ones who are trying to get to teach or how to practice academic fluency in English, they always tell me, oh, but I've never met a foreign person. I've never spoken to a foreign person before. And so that was kind of an interesting, first question I had that I kind of want to report. And then moving, I don't know why I can't move further. Okay. So, and as I said, part of the presentation also included current actions by the Japanese government to help promote international exchange in Japan. As of 2024, the government has approved a 37.8 billion yen budget to promote international exchange. It looks like most of the budget will go to promoting international student programs in Japan, while of the whole sum, we have 3.1 billion yen, if my data is accurate, will be allocated towards globalizing the Japanese education system. And so my immediate question when I see these data are, and again, I don't know more than this, and so please correct me if any of my data is wrong. I'm merely reporting. But some of my questions are, is this number, this second number, enough to help us truly promote global competency? And his budget allocation, the only thing we need ultimately, right? Because that's, I think those are some of the things I want to talk about. And as a way to answer my second question, especially, is budget enough? I just want to share two presentations that I listened to during the conference. One was by, so it's a study by Dr. Anna Sophia Hoffmeyer and Dr. Fern Sakamoto. They were coming from Nanzan University, and they're both involved with the study abroad programs there. And they've been conducting a focus group research, including Japanese college students and their study abroad experiences. And some of the findings that we're sharing included the idea of students coming back from study abroad, having struggles not only to, first of all, to adjust into the Japanese job interview system, which, as we know, is pretty structured and there were, for example, there was the problem of conflicting calendars. So they were coming from study abroad at a time where the job interview had already started in Japan, and so they felt already behind in a sense. But not only that, their general experience was that Japanese interviewers did not really care or see the experience of studying abroad as relevant to the Japanese job market, which it was a big deal. I mean, very crucial and frustrating for students, for sure. A couple students reported that they felt that not just the job interviewer, but the university itself was using the student experience merely for PR purposes. But there was no real attempt, even on the university's part, to really understand their study abroad experience and the kind of transformative experience that can involve, right? We're not talking about just language skills acquisition. We're talking about broadening your horizons culturally, socially. I mean, start thinking in different ways, and all those things that we know are very important when it comes to study abroad, right? And connecting to other cultures. So none of that was happening. And I'm not surprised because I've heard things like that before, and yet these numbers are just scary to me. It's scary that we're still here, I guess. Along those lines, another talk that I find particularly interesting was by Stephen Entridge. He's from the Institute of East Asian Studies and University of Duisburg-Essen, but he's been working with Tokyo University Professor Sho Fujiwara, who was not attending the meeting. However, they've been working together for a number of years, and they were reporting findings from a later current study that they did on the gender impact of Japanese students' international mobility and ways that this experience may influence Japanese women's life satisfaction trends and labor market trends in Japan. And some of the main data they were sharing was that, first of all, Japanese women are more inclined to travel abroad than Japanese men, not surprisingly, given that still today there's less societal pressure to get a certain job, right, by a certain age towards women. Therefore, they feel more flexible, more freer to experiment and travel. However, most of the traveling done by Japanese women currently, I believe, is as far as 75% is actually for sightseeing, right? only about 25% of these women go abroad to study and often stay for work. And when it comes to the experience of those 25%, struggles were also very relevant. You know, from the results, the interviews they were conducted, one of the main problems was, not surprisingly, is that no career boost was expected in these women when they come back, right? Even if they receive a graduate degree and substantial work experience abroad, they still don't see a big change in the sort of, in the career opportunities they might have. Yeah, and they not left Japan compared to the men who had stayed there the whole time and stayed in Japan. And of course, also, as we can imagine, a general struggle in readjusting to Japanese society, especially when it comes to perception of gender roles, right? And so I thought these two talks in particular were very relevant to us, not only in terms of teaching global education, but also when we think of the minority, and still minority role played by, you know, Todai female students, right, and graduates. And so this is a question, for example, that I have for the future, is how similar or different this experience would be for our female students here at Todai, right, as students and also when they graduate. And so this is just about other talks. And then I want to talk a little bit about my own presentation there. So this was the title of the presentation, Global Competency in the Post-COVID Era, Promises and Challenges of COIL Pedagogy. And to be noted, I was scheduled to present together with my COIL project partner, Audrey Short, who's from Virginia Commonwealth University. She could not attend the conference in person. So she actually, that's her, she actually delivered a video presentation, which I don't have time to show you, but Audrey Short has been working with COIL and study abroad in general, study abroad promotion in general for many years. And so she explained a little more in detail how this project happened and what is the rationale behind it. I won't have time to talk about that, but I'm hoping that by talking about our project together, you can get a sense of why we're doing this and what is COIL. So COIL is the idea of collaborative online international learning, meaning you get to have your students discuss, collaborate at the same time, so live on Zoom with students from another country, another university. That's just very simple terms. Why COIL? Why do we think that that's important? It helps students and teachers get a deeper understanding of global competency because it allows us to practice social and cultural empathy, both on screen and off screen. And I'll tell you and I explain to you how we got to this idea. COIL also offers opportunity to engage in global conversations to students with limited travel means. And I believe that's especially important for Todai, where we have students coming from a variety of backgrounds, right? And so help boost also the students' dreams and chances for future study abroad experiences. And we believe that COIL is a great way to move forward with global education in terms of putting to good use our pandemic pedagogical experiences, particularly the idea we all got used to teach online. Use that experience, those tools, as a way to move forward. And so I'm going to talk to you now more specifically about what my experience with this project has been and my collaboration with Audrey has been, just to give a sense of what we mean by COIL and why COIL. So I briefly talk about project development, theme of the project, main changes and updates throughout the years, and then briefly going over student experiences and lesson learned. So first of all, my research, now I'm thinking Japanese, my research specialty is in Minzoku Gaku, so folklore and cultural studies. And so we decided in our collaboration that food and culture was a good topic because for a number of reasons that I'll tell you in a second. And so we had a 6-week project involving students from different universities, and the topic was divided into readings and discussions related to food and culture. So we had food and identity, food and place, traditions, cultural change, cultural preservation, etc. And what are the main benefits of this theme? Of course, me having expertise in food studies and folklore study definitely helped, but food and culture, it's something that really lends itself well to topics related to diversity and inclusion, right? As you can see from the list. And it really lends itself well to intercultural conversations around food. And last but not least, is also a topic that you can apply through hands-on activities. So for example, besides regular discussions online, we also had a cooking demonstration. Students were assigned an ethnographic observation and then asked to report. And then finally, because the first time we did this project was actually happening in the fall semester, and we were working with students from Mexico, we also had a beautiful encounter in which students from Mexico were describing food memorials for Días de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, in Mexico, happening around Halloween, as we know. And my students were also assigned to create their own food memorial. So it was a very beautiful intercultural exchange. But how did it work? So we started in 2021, and we ran the project through 2021, 2022. So there was one class, and that was a writing intensive course that I taught at the time at Virginia Commonwealth University. This is before I moved to the US. So we had a total of 6 class sessions, about 9-12 students per university class. And my students had advanced level of English. My students were native speakers of English, but we worked with students from OSA, which is University in La Salle in Oaxaca, Mexico, and the students had advanced level of English. In 2022, 2023, the project expanded to include a second academic partner, this time from Italy, the Sorrento Institute from Naples, Italy. So, and I actually tried in the spring 2023, I tried a very, very short pilot for this in one of my flow classes here at Todai. And it was only one meeting. It was only one session outside of class, therefore it was optional for extra points because I didn't know yet, and I don't know yet exactly what I can do, what I cannot do with COIL at Todai, to be honest. And this talk is also here for us to discuss, and involved students from one of my 4 classes at Todai with VCU students who volunteered, right, for extra credit. And they were supervised by Audrey Short, my partner, and my students' level of English is intermediate. And these are some photos from our 21-22 project, original project between Mexico, and we just like these collages because it gives a sense of how much was going on there. And this is the images of the food memorial that students were exchanging. Really great memories here. Students' reflection really showed that this was their highlight, the highlight of the project. And these are actually images from the Todai students. I was not there because those were optional meetings, but Audrey Short was supervising most of the meeting, and students in this class are asked, at least in my classes, are asked to prepare a final presentation in which they're asked to reflect on what they've done so far, why they're currently here, and what their future goals are. And so wait for them to reflect on their journey, academic journey, and what their future goals are once they graduate from Todai. And so I simply asked them to use this optional session to practice their presentation. But as they did that, they got to share their goals and struggles and concerns with somebody coming from another culture, right, in English. And several of them reported, and then I had final reflection, informal reflection at the end. And in the reflection, they reported that they felt that they were being supported by the other person. You know, there was a moment of empathy there that went beyond the culture or the language or the university affiliation. It was really beautiful to see how, you know, people in the same age, they were helping each other. But it was not just that. Like, it felt like the overall experience was very positive. And I'm going to show you some highlights of those in a second. The main lessons we learned, the main, you know, takeaways that were positive from that experience have to do with diversity and inclusion. So when we think of global competency, we want to think of ways to encourage foreign faculty and students to be actively involved in lesson planning and class discussion. Because too often, when we think of cultural encounters involving native speakers and non-native speakers, we put the native speakers on a pedestal with the idea that they have to help the non-native speakers there, as if the non-native speaker has nothing to offer. But we know that in reality, global competency and global exchange is a two-way street. Everybody has something to offer. Everybody has a different set of assets, as we call them here: linguistic, cultural, social asset, technological assets. And so that's something that really stood out from that project, that we wanted to make sure that would happen, and it worked. So, for example, we assigned student discussion leaders on both sides. We encourage foreign students to share and also translate some cultural content related to their country, so they feel that they're more, they have more agency, they have more power in the moment of exchange. And so in that sense, the idea was to establish a more equal relationship between US and international students and also colleagues. So same goes with colleagues that you might be partnering with. And that really worked in terms of also for my students at the time, my native speaker students from VCU, it really helped them recognize their own and also their partner assets. For example, VCU actually happens to be very diverse race-wise. And so one of my students, and one of my assets is that I'm an immigrant that can relate to knowing about the differences between American and non-American cultures. And I thought that was a very good moment for a student like that who would normally consider themselves minority in the US, feel that they have a role to play. They have an important role to play. So those were some of the moments that felt very positive. Continuing on in terms of positive response, this is from my students at VCU, spring 2023. Actually, sorry, these are from my second, I can't see, these are from my students at Todai. So as I said, just one class, one semester, totally optional, but it confirmed the positive responses, and these are some highlights. So most of them asked me, no, all of them asked me, don't do it just for one class. Don't do it optional. Do it for all of us. Do it for all the classes. All the students should benefit from this, and which was amazing to see, right? Of course. But some of the highlighted parts, you know, I think are very important. For example, one student writes, this would improve. I thought that more Japanese students should have opportunities to talk to students from other countries. This would improve the quality of discussions about Japanese students. And then another student focuses on the idea of building ongoing intercultural relationship, which is very important, considering especially that flow is one of the few, very few classes at Todai still that students have as an opportunity to speak English, right? To have academic discussions in English. They don't have many opportunities, especially once they go to the junior. I know the mission of the Global Center of Education is exactly that, expand that, but we're not there yet, right? And so students really felt that those initiatives could really make a difference. Not only that, the idea of boosting students' linguistic confidence, which if you've taught in English or another language at Todai, you know that how difficult it is for a lot of students to feel confident in their English ability, on their foreign language ability. And I really like this last comment here, but one student says, I used to think that Professor Inserra may feel that my English isn't good. Yet by talking with a BCU student, I realized that I can make myself understood in English. Therefore, I like the most to know that I can have a conversation with foreign people in English to some extent, right? And so here goes the practical application, of course, which does a lot more than a lot of sometimes class activities. And finally, going back to the idea of cultural diversity and inclusion, these again are some comments from students at Todai. I think it's very useful that it could not only improve my English, but also broaden my horizon, because I could hear a lot of her thought about her culture and future. Living in Japan, it is difficult to have a global experience perspective because there are no opportunities to speak with foreigners at all. But my partner likes to speak with foreigners, and they study Japanese and Chinese in addition to English and Spanish. And in this case, they mean the partner that they met online. And so it was also interesting for them to see the difference, right? This person is learning different languages. This person is coming from a very diverse background. So it really helped them see things a little differently. And then finally, a particular like this one, how a conversation partner was an Islamic immigrant from Pakistan. And I really understand the United States is a solid both. And so I'll end on that note, which is cute, but it also really shows what students are going through and, you know, what strikes them and makes an impression on them. And then I want to end with, I think we're doing okay. I have a couple more minutes. And so I want to focus particularly on the idea of cultivating social and cultural empathy. So one student writes, what I liked the most was that the BCU student understood and then supported my dreams. Supporting my dream by referring to her experience. Her support encouraged me a lot. And this is the empathy I was talking about before, right? We talk about cultural empathy. We talked about global empathy, global competency, but how to actually make that happen in the classroom, it's a completely different story, right? And I felt that there were moments in this experience where I could see that happen. What I think is most important, however, especially given the fact that we have, at least in our classes, in flow classes, so English fluency for academic speaking, we have various backgrounds of English proficiency, actually in ALES as well. So we have students who worked hard to get here on a scholarship. And they've never had opportunity to study abroad or, you know. But then, of course, we have lots of students who have had the opportunity to not only through their family, I mean, through, you know, financial opportunities to go to cram school, to study abroad. So the level is varied because of that. And I think that this kind of initiative ultimately is accessible to everybody, to all levels. And so, and really, it's there to help students who have limited travel needs. And in the US, we call that first generation students. I am one of them. So I was actually part of a support group for first generation students at my previous university. And I think we can talk in terms of first generation students here at Todai as well. And the idea of, you know, students who are often dealing with imposter syndrome, right, of being here. And that includes also female students. And I think for those students in particular, this kind of experience can be life-changing. So one student writes, I had the most fun when I was being introduced to foreigners because there are almost no opportunities to talk to them and get to know them. I've never been to foreign countries and I don't have friends in foreign countries. So I had fun talking to BCU students. And then finally, it was very interesting because it was the first time I had actually spoken to someone from abroad. Now, of course, Mariko Sawa, I think she's still here. Mariko-san was reminding me the other day that right outside the globalization office, there are tables where the international students go and study. And I know that in theory, we can send the students to talk to them. There are ways, right? But sometimes the ways that we can think of are not necessarily the ones that are most comfortable for the students. But we definitely have to work harder in that sense because we do have a large number of international students already on campus, and somehow things are not happening. Even though there's a lot of effort, right, from the globalization office, there's a lot of events happening. things are happening, but yet a lot of my students don't seem aware of it, or maybe they're just too busy. I don't know. There are many reasons. It's hard to generalize, but I do wish that we can work more with those efforts and trying to have those conversations happening. So anyway, whether it's if you do a long project like we did at VCU, it's time consuming and it's a lot of paperwork, right? And it requires a lot of planning. However, as the Toda example showed you, you can also think of something very small that you can do that is optional. It can be one event a semester. There are many different ways. It's an adaptable kind of project. You can do a smaller project. You can have students involved for extra credit. And more importantly, as I said before, this kind of project, COIL project, pedagogy, has potential beyond the COVID pandemic. And it helps Japanese students boost their self-confidence towards English. We talk about accents all the time, for example, and they're afraid of speaking because of that. Limited opportunity for study abroad intercultural interactions, and finally, global competency and cultural empathy. And so these are my 2 cents about the conference and also COIL. And I hope it was all clear. Sorry if I spoke too fast, but we have a few minutes for questions and comments.